In today's video, I want to talk about how you can get free plants, indoor and outdoor plants. Stay tuned. I love plants, indoor plants and outdoor plants. And they're getting pretty expensive, well, like everything is these days. But you can get free plants if you learn how to propagate or take cuttings off plants and make your own plant. There are quite a few plants that are easy to propagate, and in this video I'm going to talk about indoor and outdoor plants that I've had success propagating. I don't know, but I sound like I'm lisping in this video, so forgive me for lisping. I'm sipping coffee as I'm making this video. But let's start with some outdoor plants that I've had good luck propagating. One is a hydrangea. Now it's a shade-loving shrub. Gardenias, which likes full sun. The gold dust plant, it's shade-loving. And geraniums, I've had good luck propagating geranium. And geraniums really are one of the easiest outdoor plants I have found to propagate. You simply take a cutting of your geranium that you have that's gotten leggy and too big, or a neighbor's geranium that's gotten too leggy or big. If you see a friend that has a pretty geranium, just say, hey, next time you cut that thing back, give me a couple of cuttings. And you can put it in water and it will root. I have even just stuck the clippings straight into potting soil, and as long as you keep it out of direct sun and that soil moist for a couple of weeks, that little cutting will start growing your own geranium. Make sure that cutting has at least 2 leaves. It seems like they do better if they have at least 2 leaves. Well, now let's talk about hydrangeas. They are so easy to propagate. You don't have to make it difficult like so many videos and articles say. My sister taught me the easy way to propagate hydrangeas. The way she propagates and gave me my first hydrangea was she laid one of the lower limbs on the ground. It was almost on the ground anyway, but she secured the limb where it touched the soil with a little stone. She left it there for about a month. And after about a month, she lifted the stone, and that little branch that was laying against the soil had now grown roots. We cut that little piece off, and now I had my own hydrangea with roots. I planted it, and it's done very well. That was my first hydrangea. I have made so many more hydrangeas from that one clipping. Here's my bush. Now at her house, they were pink. But at my house, they're blue. I understand it's the iron in the soil that makes them turn blue. Now, the longer you leave that branch laying against the soil before you cut that branch off, the more roots it will form, and the greater the success will be when you transplant. So if you want to wait longer than a month, you can. My sister's actually done some in her own yard where she laid those branches down in the spring, and she waited till the fall to cut that branch off and transplant. Now let's talk about the gold dust shrub and gardenias. The method is the same. You're going to take a cutting off a shrub you already have, or someone you know that's willing to give you a cutting off their plant. You want to take the cutting in the spring. You want that new growth. You want it to still be a little green and pliable. I have found if the cutting is already wooded off or become really hard and rigid, it's last year's growth, I don't think you're going to be successful rooting that little clipping. But if you take a cutting off that new growth in the spring, I think you'll be surprised how easily you'll get your own shrub. Put those cuttings in potting soil. I usually just stick them in solo cups, but any container will do. Put them in a windowsill. Keep the soil moist but not wet. And in 4 to 6 weeks, those little cuttings should have roots, and you'll be able to plant them in your yard. Now, the gold dust seems to be a lot easier to propagate, or at least for me. Every cutting I've taken of my gold dust shrub has made a new shrub for me. Well, the gardenia seems a little more difficult to propagate. But last spring, I took 3 cuttings off a gardenia bush I already have here in the yard. I've had it for years, but I wanted some new plants. So I took 3 cuttings, I put them in potting soil, in solo cups, in the windowsill, but for some reason, only one of my cuttings made roots. But I have planted that little gardenia bush in my yard. I planted it last year, but this year it is really starting to grow and do well. And this is it. This is a picture of my little gardenia bush that I got for free because I propagated. The gold dust shrub has been so easy for me to propagate. I have actually started taking cuttings and skipping the potting soil in a solo cup step and just putting them directly in the soil where I wanted my new plant, and they have grown. I carried a lot of cuttings to another house I had owned. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know I lived out of town for several years while I worked out of town. And that house was in a shady neighborhood. I don't mean sketchy neighborhood. There just wasn't a lot of sun, so you needed shade-loving shrubs. And I took so many cuttings of that gold dust shrub I had here at the house there, and it produced beautiful shrubs. And my neighbors in that neighborhood loved them so much, I gave them clippings and cuttings of my gold dust shrubs. So that neighborhood is full of these beautiful gold dust shrubs. It made me so happy that the neighbors wanted cuttings from my gold dust shrubs. And I felt like Johnny Appleseed, spreading this beautiful shrub through that neighborhood. And since I got such joy sharing my shrubs, my clippings from my shrubs, I know that if you would like some clippings from one of your neighbors, I feel like they'll be flattered that you want the clipping. Now let's talk about houseplants. I think they're even easier to propagate. Well, of course, there's Pathos. I think everybody's had a Pathos plant. It's probably the most common household plant and one of the easiest to grow. And all you do is just cut off one of those runners. You can stick it in water for a while. When you see some nice roots forming, you'll plant it in the soil. Super easy. Another super easy houseplant, but not as common, is Mother of Thousands. Mother of Thousands is so simple, and it grows so fast, especially if you set it outside in the spring and summer, then bring it back in for the winter. You literally just take clippings, stick it straight in the soil, and you'll have new plants. I've actually taken clippings and tossed them over my deck at my other house, and went out a few weeks later, and those clippings that I had just thrown over the deck were growing. So this plant is super easy to grow. It actually even has little babies or seeds along the leaves, and it will fall in the soil and produce more plants just by the little seeds that will fall. So it's actually kind of invasive. If you don't watch out, if you have this plant near one of your other plants, you will start seeing some little Mother of Thousand plants coming up in your other plants. But it's a fun plant, super easy, and it even blooms. Another popular houseplant is the Christmas cactus, or Thanksgiving cactus, or Easter cactus. They are so easy to propagate. If you have a friend or family member that has one, have them break you off a few pieces. You want to let those pieces sit for a day or two to kind of dry a little. Then plant those little pieces pointing the right direction. You want those little points pointing up. It won't work. They won't grow if you plant them upside down. Just arrange those little pieces, and before long, those little pieces will start growing, and you'll have your own Christmas cactus. Snakeplant is another very easy houseplant to grow and to propagate. You simply take cuttings of a leaf and put it into soil, and it will grow. Now I said cuttings, but you can actually only cut one leaf off of a snake plant, sometimes called mother-in-law's tongue, and cut that one leaf into many sections. And then make sure you know which end is up on your section. You don't want to plant the section upside down. I always notch the bottom so I don't get confused. But each one of those sections can be planted and it will grow. Another succulent that is so easy to propagate is the Starfish Cactus. It's not a cactus at all. It's actually a very soft plant. There's no little pointy spikes and has a very unique bloom. Super easy to propagate. You just break off some pieces of a friend's plant, leave it out to let it dry a few days, and then stick it in the dirt. You don't want to water this one for 7 days. If you do, it will turn to mush and die. But if you don't water it for 7 days, you'll have your own starfish cactus. Well, I love plants, indoor and outdoor, and I love saving money. And propagating lets me do both. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Now there are a lot more easy houseplants and outdoor plants that you can propagate. This is just a few. Comment down below and let me know some houseplants and outdoor plants that you've been successful propagating. And let's share our ideas on how to save money and get free plants. Until next time, bye.